Hello, everybody. Welcome to the user group. We got a few different locations here tuning in, so thanks for joining. Make sure to share the group with everybody if you think it's interesting. If you have any feedback or want any topics specifically talked about, feel free to reach out any of the organizers, me, Derek, Corey, or Tom. However you want to do that. If it's DMs, LinkedIn, whatever, let us know what you want to learn about. So I'll introduce the speaker for today. He was giving a talk at a previous group I was a part of, and I just thought it was really fun the way you talked about getting started with AI, kind of skirting some content safety policies, and yeah, just basically working and building an interesting project. So I'll go ahead and hand it over to you, Victor.
Yeah, so my name is Victor Fry. This is going to be AI for Dummies and building AI-powered apps without the data science degree. I'm going to emphasize a few times early on here. This is starting at that very foundational level. My goal is that more people start feeling comfortable with AI, and we'll talk a little bit about that. But so agenda, I'm going to do a little bit of introduction of me, my employer, just all those kind of comments. And then we're going to dive into the actual talk of an AI overview, and we're going to start narrowing down into using AI as a service and a demo application that uses some of these things. And just going to be doing a lot of Azure demo in that section. I'm going to try to move fast through the overview, but feel free to slow me down if something's really interesting. And then it's going to be closing remarks and QA as well. So if there's any questions, feel free to let me know. I've shown this app a couple times and usually a little bit of fun. So first, hello from Grand Rapids. My name is Victor Fry. I call myself your friendly neighborhood developer. Today, that neighborhood seems to mean a lot of the Midwest. That's really exciting. I've built a couple interesting things, or at least I think they're interesting. I built MicrosoftGraveyard.com. So that just, if you're familiar with like Killed by Google, it's very similar to that. A lot of dead Microsoft products, including my beloved Clippy, and Windows Phone, going back to old versions of Windows, all sorts of things. I also started blogging. Feel free to check that out. It's going to be a lot of .NET and hopefully Azure content in the future as well. But I have 6 years of experience as a developer. And in that 6 years, I found my passion specifically in the cloud DevOps backend engineering space, a lot of times around developer productivity and automation, because I like doing less work to get more work done, if that makes sense. And because of that, AI has become a bit more of an interest for me, especially in these last few years, as it is for probably a lot of other people. I also work as a senior software engineer at Leading Edge. We're a consultancy company out of Columbus, Ohio. A lot of what we do is just custom software development, whether that's project-based or staff aug kind of work. And a lot of focus on bringing best practices, bringing that consultancy vibe. But really the thing that's important is we have a lot of expert talent. And I've mentioned I do more in the cloud DevOps, some of the web backend space, but we also have people in Agile, and we have experts in AI. And I want to highlight, I am not an expert in AI. I know a little bit, enough to be dangerous, and really that's the focus, is you don't have to be an expert in AI to start getting started with building AI applications. There's a lot you can do with just a little bit of knowledge and a little bit extra comfort just launching and getting started. Why should we do this? AI is mainstream now. We really can't avoid this. It was in every one of the developer conferences that I watched this year. It's in the news constantly. If there's layoffs, we're talking about AI. If there's hiring, we're talking about AI. What's the future generation look like? And I land in this interesting skeptic that's really exciting space where personally, I'm not sure that AI is going to be replacing engineers anytime soon, but I do think it's going to change the way we do a lot of work. And we're also going to be leveraging AI now in the future, sometimes not in the ways that maybe you're thinking about. So what kind of AI is there? AI goes deeper than ChatGPT. Like I said, I'm going to try to breeze through some of this overview stuff, so bear with me. But it goes a lot deeper. We have, right now in the trends, we are seeing a lot of stuff about agents. We're seeing stuff about co-pilots. This is the difference between autonomous and more of a pair programming kind of aspect. And a lot of this is conversational, or you launch a task and then AI can go and do it for you. But beneath that, we still have a lot of core AI platforms and a lot of core AI disciplines. AI as a service. This is where we're going to dive in a lot, because I think developers specifically can be leveraging this more than they necessarily are right now. And then there's stuff like deep learning and machine learning that still build the foundation of what AI offers. So let's dive into AI as a service. What is it? It follows the cloud service model. A lot of us are going to be familiar with this, but infrastructure as a service or platforms as a service, in that the cloud handles a lot of the AI concerns for us. That means maybe it's the hosting of the model, maybe it's the building and training of the model itself. That AI almost infrastructure versus AI platforms, you can kind of think about it. But one of the important things is we can interact through APIs, and our cloud providers provide a lot of options for us. I mentioned Azure. I think this is all Azure user groups. And this is just my platform of choice. Really, you could build this outside of Azure, but that's what we're going to be demoing. So hopefully that translates. Okay, types of AI as a service. Really breaking it down into 4. There's bots. These are the things we're seeing a lot of right now with chatbots like ChatGPT, like Anthropic's Cloud. You also get things like the more traditional Amazon Alexa or Google Home, these virtual assistants, social media bots. Some of one of my favorite is internally we have a bot that anytime someone says noise, it just comments noise again. I don't know why, but beautiful. That sometimes that's AI, sometimes that's just direct pattern matching. That said, there's also machine learning frameworks. And this is that machine learning being a lot more foundational to AI, where we're training and creating new models that can actually make a prediction. And you can get this as a service as well. Azure provides Azure ML, where you can train your own, or there's a lot of machine learning patterns and approaches that you can apply and actually train your own model. And then there's also cognitive computing APIs, which is a little bit on the other side of this, and what we're going to show, where the model's already been trained for you. And these have a lot of overlap in that you can use a machine learning as a service offering to build some kind of model that recognizes pictures. Think, is this a hot dog? Is this not a hot dog? Well, you could build your own model, train it on a bunch of pictures of hot dogs, not hot dogs, and all of a sudden now you have something that can reliably predict whether it is one or not. But you might also just want to use something in the cognitive computing section, whereas this is already built for you. Generally, this is going to be a lot more generalized model that doesn't just know hot dogs. Maybe it knows hamburgers. Maybe it knows this is a corn cob. All sorts of different things here. And that generalized sense provides us less time that we actually have to spend building it ourselves. And a 4th category, this one, you're probably the data in it already, but data analytics and insights, there's a lot of AI as a service offerings that can do this kind of predictive analytics, anomaly detection. One of the best examples is every time you swipe a credit card, that information, what you just purchased, is being sent off probably to somewhere like Visa, and they're saying, hey, does this match this person's purchasing patterns? That little scribble you do, does it match how they previously scribble in the past? Well, yes, okay, that's fine. But maybe all of a sudden I'm in Mexico and they're going like, why is this guy in Mexico? He's never been there. I'm not sure this is Victor anymore. Or maybe I just go to the store and I just buy thousands of dollars worth of toilet paper. That suddenly gets really interesting for an anomaly situation, and then you have to make a judgment call. So a lot of different options. Again, we're going to keep narrowing down into that cognitive computing section because we want something that's built for us and ready to use. And that's kind of what this specializes in. But why do we even want to use this? A lot of different options. A lot of these are going to follow same principles as why we want to use the cloud. It's cost effective in the sense that it's pay for as you go. The app I'm going to be demoing, in total this year, I've demoed it 3 or 4 times previously, and I completely rebuilt it from scratch. So I had to do a lot of testing myself, and I've stayed well under $10, $15 in cost for the whole year. And today's usage will probably maybe hit $1 max. I'm very confident in that because I know what I'm paying for, and I'm leveraging a lot of those. I'm just leveraging only what I actually need. Cutting edge stuff, cloud builds the latest stuff for you, rapid development deployment, able to get this spun up in like less than a minute. Even if you don't know what you're doing, it's pretty easy to get started and going fast, maybe an hour max. Scalable, stable, cloud. They have the data centers to do this for you. And then my 2 favorite are, you can focus on the core competencies. So going back to, this is for people without the data science degree. There are really smart people, and I have a ton of respect for the people leading with AI that know everything going on, all the latest news, all the latest models, can understand it really deeply. But that's not what I do best, and that's not what every developer needs to do best to get started. We can focus on what we actually do well. In my case, whether that's DevOps transformation or just automating something new and using AI that's been built for me to do that, I'm really excited about that. And I think a lot of people should be. And then innovation and experimentation. When you don't have to do all the legwork to get the AI models trained up, it's really easy to start building fun stuff, maybe useful stuff. In this case, we're probably going to lean more towards the fun. But what do we have to build applications out of this? Okay, diving deeper. We talked about types of AI as a service, why the benefits of using it, but what options are there? What exists in the realm of AI? And the reality is we're seeing a lot of focus on generative AI, but there's a lot of other exciting areas too. So computer vision, this is where I actually got started myself, in that image classification realm where we're teaching a computer to see, literally computer vision. And if you really think about it, we as humans can see a picture and start to go like, oh, that little graphic, that looks like an eyeball. But why would a computer know that offhand? Just think that when you upload an image on social media, you might get the question to provide alt text because the computer has no idea what you uploaded. And if someone struggles seeing, they also need help understanding it. They need it described. Computer vision encompasses this whole area of that image, video, those kind of contents where you have to see and actually make inferences based off what you see, not just what you read. On the flip side is natural language. And I describe these as the big 2 because these mimic a lot more of the senses themselves, whereas the others are kind of sub areas. Natural language, if computer vision is what you see, natural language is the hearing, the saying, writing, any of those other senses where you're communicating with someone through a very consistent language that's natural to you. And for AI, this starts more as the sentiment analysis, something like, hey, you have this paragraph. Maybe you left a review on this speaker presentation. And you're like, this guy, he talks really fast. He's really annoying. I don't like his purple shirt. Well, too bad, it's pink. Anything like that. Well, AI can process that body of text, regardless of how you write it, to be able to understand and make a prediction. Like maybe this is a negative comment. Maybe this is positive. Maybe it's just factual and very neutral. Where does this lie? Other areas, when you get more into the hearing and speaking, literally, you get stuff like speech synthesis and speech recognition, where we're taking text and moving it and creating audio that sounds like someone speaking it. Maybe it's a really robotic voice, those ones that you go like, wow, this is unnatural. Who would ever say that word like that? Or maybe you get this the inverse, where you're getting a transcript built for you as you're speaking. And then you even get into this really cool area of machine translation, where maybe I'm talking in English and the application can translate behind the scenes to German and someone else is hearing German. That's some of the exciting areas of natural language. But there's three other disciplines in this of document intelligence. This is just that simple. Hey, I have a document. I know that this is a form. It's a survey, a feedback form saying how someone did. These are the fields. Take the exact text out of this raw document and give me the data for those fields. It's a lot of that. It's a very specialized area in computer vision for the most part, but also can overlap with natural language. And then the other one is knowledge mining. This is a fancy word, but I would describe it simply as this is Google. Google can take all the websites that it's scraped, that it's crawled, and it builds an index relating these to a bunch of keywords, the content, what's there. And when you type a query, you get results. And Google is probably the most high profile example of a knowledge mining scenario, but it's becoming very popular in a lot of our new AI applications because you get the context of what's in maybe a subset of documents, and then you can provide it to another AI model that understands that, where you get realms like the vector searching that's becoming incredibly popular. And all of this has led to the trendiest and the latest subdiscipline in AI of generative AI. I actually like to link this back to natural language for people that are less familiar, because that large language model goes to natural language in that a lot of what we're doing is we're creating new content. And it starts with text content. You provide a prompt to chatbot, and I say, hi, good morning, how are you today? And it predicts what's next. In a lot of polite conversation, you say, I'm good. Maybe you talk about the weather. And it knows these are the next things that come afterwards. But a lot that starts with processing natural language that you input, but the output on the other side is something really exciting in content generation. Before generative AI, a lot of AI follows a very simple, hey, I have a set of inputs, I know that I've been trained on, and if you provide me something like this, I can make a prediction. And it's usually a simple prediction. Going back to sentiment analysis, you get stuff like, is this a positive or negative review? 0, 1, however you represent that. But generative AI all of a sudden introduces this idea of creating something new based off a bunch of quick predictions. I know these words in this pattern make sense based off what I saw previously and what I previously just said. And this starts to allow us to build some new and exciting applications. Okay, quickly, getting almost done with the overview sections. Azure provides a bunch of different services for us that allow us to take advantage of all these disciplines, either in specialized services or very generic. You got stuff like Azure OpenAI, you got stuff like Azure AI Search that goes to knowledge mining. You got dedicated computer vision, custom vision, training your own stuff that's like the face API, relatively locked down, does exist, but able to see faces, translator, all sorts of fun stuff. What do we want to use to build an application? Well, first, we have to start with what do we want to build? So at my work, we have this hackathon event called Eduvation Days. Everyone comes together, we pitch ideas of things we want to build, and then we form little sub teams and build them. Very familiar if you've ever done a hackathon kind of event. And one day, I was on Slack, Huddles, I was doing a meeting, and I didn't really look my best. I'm a vain person. I care about my appearance, and I know and I'm harsh on myself when I don't live up to what I think I should look like. I know, my own problems. But I didn't look that great, and I noticed when you huddle over yourself, Slack just tells you, hey, you look great today, or something really, really similar to that. And I was like, stop lying to me, Slack. So I started to form this idea. What if it could actually tell me how I really look? Think mirror, mirror on the wall, that classic Disney mirror that's able to say, this is the fairest person of them all. It's able to describe them. It's able to make comments on what it sees, that computer vision concept. And then going a little bit further, I like humor. If you're familiar with the Roast Me subreddit, just where you take a picture of yourself and then all of a sudden a bunch of people mock you and insult you in either really funny ways or sometimes really hurtful, all of a sudden an idea is starting to form. This even gets better when I had the idea that I could mock my boss and say the AI did it. I didn't say that. That's just what the AI said. And it's formed this concept of a mocking mirror application that I wanted to build. So classic developer, think through what is the requirements, what's the workflow look like? Well, I know I need to display a video. It's just kind of polite. Think this Teams call right here. I'm on camera. I can actually see myself. I'm looking at myself right now. It's kind of creepy. And based off that, I know what Teams sees, so I know what's being presented. It's just kind of a user experience aspect. This is not something that needs AI. This is proven. This is already a normal part. There's web APIs that do this for you. Okay, we need to capture an image. Another really simple aspect based off what we see. We can just capture a still image. And now we have something as an input. And then we start to get a little bit more complex. I want to describe that image. Right now, wearing a pink purple shirt. I have long hair. I'm wearing glasses. I have a beard. All these kind of aspects. I want the application to be able to process and know these facts about me as well. And to do that, I know I'm probably going to need AI. One, how do you even describe this to as a computer? Like that, it knows pixels. That's how images are stored. That's how it's processed. A computer really doesn't care about the combination of pixels. It mostly cares about, hey, what are the color values of this pixel? Where is it in the graph? Voila. So AI is needed at this step. Then we get to the fourth stage. We need to create something. I want to create a roast. And this is something brand new, that magic word create. As an application developer, if you've ever built some kind of state engine, taking a bunch of different values and then making something new out of that is really hard and really complex. And that's just complexity I would not want to deal with. It actually is where generative AI made this really possible. When I found out my company did this hackathon and someone did almost the same application years previously, but generative AI hadn't caught on and wasn't accessible. So that's enabled something new. And then finally, just for a nice touch, I want to speak the roast because I don't want to hear my voice all the time. Some of you are already hearing too much of my voice. We're at 25-ish minutes. So AI elements, breaking that down just a touch more. We need to describe the image, options for this. Knowing what we know about AI, I know this falls into the realm of computer vision. We want the computer to be able to see what's in the image and make an analysis, describe it. We also have the two options. We have traditional computer vision, and we have multimodal LLMs. One of these fits way better in this use case than the other, and it's going to be the multimodal. I'll demonstrate a little bit of why, but it's just, yeah. And then we're going to create a roast. Using what we described in that image becomes the input to the next. We're going to use just traditional LLM capabilities of, hey, provide a prompt based off the image and create something new, specifically telling it that we want it to be roasting us. And then finally, that text, we want it to turn into audio. This falls into a very simple speech synthesis scenario. And I don't want to use an LLM for this. I do know there are voice-capable LLMs in that multimodal world, but that gets really complex. That seems harder to me to grasp mentally than image to text for some reason. So I'm just going to stick with traditional speech there. Okay, so that leaves us with what Azure AI services we're going to use. I'm specifically going to use Azure OpenAI for this. I know there's a bunch more going on in the LLM space here for Azure now, but I built this over a year and a half ago for the first time, and I'm sticking with what I built that first time at the moment. And then we have Azure AI Speech, that dedicated service for handling speech to text and text to speech scenarios. In this case, only that text to speech. Cool. Okay. So we get to the actual fun part, the demos, the mocking mirror application. All right. This is where you have to watch me struggle navigating a bunch of browser windows around. So first thing I said, I'm going to show why computer vision in its traditional sense might not meet our needs. CP. So I got a couple resources out here. Got a computer vision service. As I mentioned, I have the Azure OpenAI service and the speech services already deployed out there. And I'm just going to go to the Vision Studio. You can find this easily by after you've deployed any kind of computer vision service. It just has this handy link on the overview. And I left my test trial out there. So I get to the home of here and a whole bunch of different options. If you're not familiar, a lot of the Azure service AI services have their own little studios. They're also starting to center around what's called Azure AI Foundry. I'll show that, but this is the Vision Studio. And I know I'm looking for an image analysis scenario. It's going to use my existing service. And I can see there's kind of two scenarios to try out here that might be relevant. Add captions versus add dense captions. I can try out both, but I know from experience that dense captions is a little bit closer because it gives me more options. So I'm going to try here. And this is where I'm probably going to have a problem with the camera. So I'm going to turn the camera off in Teams. And then I'm going to come here and I'm going to take a photo. There we go. Still can see me. Capture photo. Try again. Smile. Awkward. Didn't like looking at that. And I get a couple detected attributes. Using the API, the SDK for this, I could get all this in code as well, but trying this out in these portals is really useful for just kind of getting an idea before doing all the integration work. And I get stuff like, oh, a man in a purple shirt. I get a man with glasses and a beard, a window with a view of trees. You can, in fact, see what's actually a bush out there, but close enough. White object with black border. Oh, good guess there. And there it has blurry image of a lamp. None of this is super descriptive. It provides a little bit to work with, but imagine trying to make a joke given just the all of these or just one of these. A close-up of a man's neck. Wow. I think that's a little insulting to call my whole body a neck, but that doesn't give any kind of AI a lot to work with if I wanted to pass this on. It might be really useful if I am just creating some kind of alt text, but it's not useful in this aggregated scenario where I'm taking this input and passing this as output again. Turn back on camera, try to stay on for recording. So this is why I decided that a multimodal LLM, that vision-enabled chat, might be a lot more useful for my application. It's still out here. It actually would be really nice to use because if I go back to resource, you can see I'm working with a free tier. Yeah, I have limits, but this is completely free to use. And if I stay under those limits, and I'm going to do that, I'm not going to be sending thousands of requests in a couple seconds. So I know I'm good there. But again, not working for this scenario. So what do we want to use? I want to be using that OpenAI service, which again is able to deploy an Azure OpenAI service out to Azure. And then if you go to the overview, you're going to find those portal links always in these overviews. It's really nice. already pulled it up, and I have the Azure AI Foundry. This provides me a lot of relevant information, possibly an intimidating amount of information to get started. But after playing around with it a little bit, it starts to get really useful. So right now, I'm just going to try that chat scenario again. Really should clean up my test trials. That's fine. So here, very similar to working with like a chat GPT, in Copilot, any of those chatbot interfaces that we're familiar with. We also get to see the system prompt. I am going to use something like this in code, and we'll see that. But saying, hey, you are an AI assistant, teases the user. They will upload a picture, and you will use aspects of that image to roast them. So I don't know how to take a picture in this, but I do have a bunch of pictures. I'm going to use one from my wedding. And I'm just going to say, mock me. Very similar to, again, what you do. And it didn't catch again. Fun. So I can actually see an example response in this portal for me of what my application might do. I might want to do a little bit more fine tuning. What does that system prompt look like? What does this message look like? And I start to get an idea of how this might function in my application using these portals. And I can see here, it's kind of funny. It keeps referring to this picture as a kind of James Bond look, rejected for being too dramatic, pretending to know how to tie a bow tie. I did have to look that up. I do remember that. Somewhat funny. One of the things you will find here in an example like this one is you might catch a content filter. So while this is responding, behind the scenes, Azure is doing a little bit of protection to make these aligned to some best practices, some AI, what's the word? Some AI guardrails into being fair, polite, acceptable. And one of them, in this case, is violence. Turns out roasting people tends to scale towards that violence meter. And sometimes Azure will catch it and stop the response by saying, hey, you've hit the threshold for this content filter. You have customizations. I was able to modify the content filter for this application and say, hey, I want to accept a high threshold of violence because I've seen from this, it's nothing too scary. I'm not launching this to the public, so I'm not worried about other people getting offended by this. Sometimes I'm able to let other people use it, but for the most part, it's in my control. But those content filters are one of the hiccups you might start to encounter. There's actually another way to deal with that, though. And we'll take a look when we hit the code for that. So let's demo, make sure ethics, let's go AI, content filters. Okay, so ready for last aspect. So for this application, I'm using .NET Aspire. I'll give a little bit of shout out to that because I love Aspire. It makes hosting demo apps really easy locally and managing all that. And I'm probably gonna have to turn off my camera again because I know this. So this is the mocking mirror application that I built. You can see, again, we're showing live video stream, so I can actually see myself. We have a capture button. When I hit that, it's going to take a picture, add other fancy stuff. I'm really proud of this. Spent a lot of time on design for this for some reason. But we can kind of see the application. Now the question is, how are we actually leveraging the AI? How are we connecting to that? And let's take a look at this a little bit. So this is made up, and you can kind of see through Aspire here. I have a client. This is my front end. It's just a JavaScript application. This is less important for the actual AI purposes. The more exciting part is I have a .NET API behind the scenes doing the actual calls out to Azure for these AI as a service services. And we're going to take a look at that. So First, what do we need to connect to a chat client? For OpenAI, for other chat clients in .NET, we have the Microsoft extensions .ai. This provides a nice little consistent interface for interacting with chats. Not really super necessary. We could also go to OpenAI's SDK itself. But three things that pretty consistently we do need are one, an endpoint. It's cloud backing services. So that means a lot of network traffic. People are going making network calls. We need to know where that URL is. We have an API key. We don't want people that aren't authorized to be calling this. Don't want you racking up my bill on Azure. And then we have a deployment name. This is the unique one for chat interactions because we can have a variety of different LLM models. A lot of the AI as a service offerings, there's one set model you're working with. So that computer vision, Microsoft has already trained a model specifically generalized for computer vision scenarios, and that is doing a lot of that image analysis, any of the computer vision workload tasks. But with LLMs, we start to get into this world of, hey, this is GPT 3.5, this is GPT 4.1, and we get a little bit more complex. You also need to tell your application what deployment it's talking to. So in this case, I've named it something generic, named after the model. I named it GPT 4.1. We'll see how I find that. But then the other one, speech client. I like to give this one as a second example because it also needs an API key. We're always focused on that privacy, that authorization, authentication scenario. But we need a region instead. So all the backing services somewhere need to make a network call, but some of them are able to do so through regions, through account names. There's other ways to construct that URL. It really does come back to, at some level, you're providing a URL and an API key so that you can authenticate. Where do we find those? Well, we go back to the Azure portal. So starting with the OpenAI scenario, we can either be looking on the resource in the Azure portal. You can actually see the endpoints here and copy them. This provides me my endpoint, able to copy this and add it to my configuration. We can also see the region if we tried to do it that way. And here we get our API keys. That's great, but there is a third that we need for calling a chat client of some kind. That's the deployment name. There, we do actually come back to the Azure AI Foundry. And in general, when you're working with any kind of chat AI, I am going to recommend using the AI Foundry. It seems to be where Azure and Microsoft are focusing a lot of their resources into making this kind of the hub for using AI in Azure. And this also includes, hey, here's my endpoint, here's my API key, I can copy those, got a location. And then the last part is this deployment, going back to deploying models and setting up which kind of model we want to interact with. And as I mentioned, I just named mine after the model, but here I can figure out what I configured that model name as and add it to my application. Okay, so those are the three for chat. Now, what about speech? It's going to be very similar. This time, I'm just going to the resource. Again, I have endpoint. I also have the location. If you copy this, it actually gives the little friendly version of the location. We have keys, endpoints as well here. And down here, very easy to find the configuration we need. So it's not very hard to start plugging in these two to our application. So that gets us what we need for the actual plugging in. Now, what about the actual call? Let's take a look at my chat service. So as I mentioned, there's a system prompt, and you'll notice this is a little bit more complicated than the one I used in the actual chat playground, because I had to keep refining it to actually get the kind of response I want. In chats, this is all about system. You'll see a lot about system prompts which tell the chat how to behave. And then you'll start to see the separate version of, hey, this is a user prompt. And it kind of mirrors that, being a little example I showed in the playground, but a lot more complex, where I've started giving it a couple examples. I've given it a little bit more detail. One of the other trials I found is Azure frequently will blur a person's face. And you actually saw it mentioned James Bond in the chat playground. Well, that's because AI constantly goes to, hey, a blurred face means a spy for some reason. Why are you trying to be incognito? I wanted to get away from it mentioning this, and this was how I tackled that. I also found, weirdly, that a larger system prompt here helped avoid the violence threshold, to the point that my application reliably does not hit that high violence filter, and I don't have to use a custom filter all the time. I still often do for the demo, just because it would be really awkward if it did for one time hit that again. But just an idea for if you actually are dealing with those content filters, you can do a lot of modification in like a system prompt. Okay, one other I want to call out, you have all sorts of configuration options. I'm talking about prompts here, but you also have stuff like max output tokens. I mentioned I'm doing this all on my own money. No one's reimbursing me, so when I'm actually interacting with this, I want it to be using those token prompts, or I don't want it to be using too many tokens, because I don't want it to rack up a huge bill. This is one way to stay a little cost sensitive and effective. You get other things like temperature. I will admit, these configuration options quickly go over my head. Apparently temperature means stuff like how random is the response. You can play around with these things, or you can just leave them as the defaults. But getting past that configuration scenario, you start to get to, hey, how do I generate my completion? In this case, we already know we took a picture, and from that picture, we needed some binary data, and then we need to create these chat messages to interact with the model, the LLM. And this is where that multimodal image concept comes into for this model, because it's able to take both this image data and text data and combine them into one interaction for me, so that I get a roast. It's really handy. We could break these out, but for demo or for some scenarios, it just makes sense to combine. And then you can actually see it's just one call after we construct that message to get a response, and we get a bunch of text in the end. And so this is how we're describing our image, and we're creating roast content that gives us something we would display to the user. Okay, a little bit more code. What about for the speech? Again, very similar. We're doing some configuration. Each one of these SDKs for Azure does have some uniqueness. In the speech service, instead of calling it a client, it's a config. We're telling it with language and voice, so we can customize the actual voices. I'm using out of the box. These are actually the defaults. I just did it for, again, showing off. But we have to new up our config. We have to set our configuration. And then speech has a fun side effect that caught me off guard. When you're interacting with this, if you just think about it, well, sometimes speech, we don't want to record the audio data and pass audio data around. We just want it to interact with our system IO. And it'll do that for you. So there's a couple times where the servers probably don't have any kind of audio equipment on them, but I was just telling it to speak on the server. And you get some weird behavior with that. You can control where you're actually outputting the audio, or you can just get the audio data itself. And in the end, it's once again one-line call out to the actual client in Azure servers and telling it to speak text, and we get audio data as a result. And you can kind of see how these are starting to chain together. And finally, we get back to our demo application and why my camera is off. So we can capture this. We're going to see if the audio actually comes through. It's going to spin for a few seconds.
With that bold head of hair, you're just a guitar away from being mistaken for a 70s rock band roadie who got lost on the way to the reunion tour. That purple shirt says, I put effort in, but not too much.
And we can see it provides a rest. Fun fact, ever since I started building this, I've been growing out my hair, and it's consistently made fun of me for my hair. But so the code for this, I will say, is out on GitHub. I'll provide a link in a few more seconds, but I'm gonna switch back to some wrap up for our presentation. Okay, and big screen. Okay, so trials along the way. If watching and looking at the amount of code, and even as I'm inviting, go look at it yourself if you would like. The actual calls out to use AI as a service are relatively small. Most of what you saw was configuration, it's optional configuration, and it's pretty simple to start leveraging these AI as a service offerings, whether they're more traditional computer vision models or services, speech services, those language services that we were talking about, or something more complex like these chat services through OpenAI, through Azure AI service offerings. And that part's easy. You are going to hit a couple road bumps. I talked about content filters. The violence filter is the one that's been the bane of this project's existence. Probably not going to be as much of a conflict if you're trying to do something a little bit more business minded. Turns out making fun of your boss isn't good business practice, but hey, worked for me. Region limits. So in demoing and in deploying, a lot of the AI services have specific regions. So if you're working in an enterprise environment where certain region, you're locked to deploying resources in certain regions, you might have to explore a couple extra for AI. I have found the really big ones like East US and East US, East US 2, and West US typically offer these. But even there, you'll find like, hey, this needs to be an East US, this needs to be an East US 2. So you start to play a little bit of region hopping, and it can impact performance on slight degrees. It can also just be a pain. The face blurring, as I talked about, everything going through Azure when it comes to computer vision, they're blurring your face for privacy. Face recognition is a very sensitive AI topic. You get platform requirements. When I went to deploy this last time, I actually had to fight because of the speech SDK utilizing some Windows codecs that aren't available on Linux or specific versions of Linux. So when you might have to worry about that, especially in stuff that like speech where you're interacting with the system I/O. And then multimodal limitations. So this is obviously a lot more about Azure AI as a service offerings, where we're using cloud-provided services. It's cost-effective in the sense it's pay only as you go, but there is the challenge of, hey, it's not free. It'd be really nice to do this locally. I have found once you start moving into multimodal LLMs, that means anything that's not text to text, you start hitting a lot more challenges finding models that can run on your own machine, and things like OLAMA start to be less supportive of what you're doing. So that becomes an extra challenge that you might have to worry about. And then cost management. It's really easy to get started. And I really emphasize that if you have never worked with AI, go test it out. But be cost sensitive, be mindful. Like I said, most of those I was using free SKUs, or I was trying to control tokens for, in the case of LLMs, just to keep costs down for myself. It's something to keep in mind. It's very easy to control, but it's also very easy to get out of hand. And then be responsible. So Microsoft provides these 6 principles of ethical AI. I actually do love these. I don't think they're advertised enough. You got stuff like fairness. AI systems should treat all people fairly. This goes to that face API scenario. There's a lot of ability for abuse when it comes to terms of fairness. We get transparency. AI systems should be understandable. You don't have to be a data scientist to actually use AI, but you should have some concepts of what you're doing. So if you know you want to do image analysis, take a few seconds to look into what computer vision and how it might work. You don't need to go in the weeds, but play around with it. Try to know what it's doing so that you can understand it. One of the big things with AI is that it's non-deterministic, meaning that the outcome is not going to be repeated, and you're going to get a lot of variability in what the result is. And knowing what we're doing does help us to be a little smart in what we're creating out there. All of these, I think you should respect, but finally, is this even applicable? So mocking mirror application, no one's probably going to go out. You might want to build this or play around with it for fun, but you're probably not going to be deploying this in your corporate environment anytime soon. Is it relevant? Well, similar use cases in a less humorous way. Self-checkout app. I'm from Michigan. We have store chain Meijer, Walmart, any one of those store chains. Imagine if when you're doing a self-checkout, it gave you a little compliment. Do you want to spend that kind of compute? Maybe not, but it is a use case that we could explore. Another one, fashion app. Imagine shopping online. You could actually overlay the clothes onto an image of yourself, see what it might look like, and then talk with an AI system that was able to make comments and say, hey, you really look good with those, or that green and purple combo is not working for you. Please don't. I'm sure there's a lot of other use cases in this image recognition and content generation space, but just a couple seconds for me, I was able to come up with these. So I do think this is applicable. And I'm just going to invite everyone to go out, innovate, experiment, start developing with it. AI might not be replacing us as developers anytime soon, but we certainly should be trying to leverage AI. And thank you. If you enjoyed this, bunch of contact info, like I mentioned at the bottom there, github.com/victorfry/mockingmirror. You can find all this code up to date. I keep it relatively up to date, and a bunch of my other socials and contact as well. And then that QR code for any security sensitive, it's just a form telling me how I did. I would always appreciate feedback.
Awesome. I appreciate that. Does anybody have any questions? Feel free to come off mute or post them in chat. If any